So, usually when you picture a formal state dinner, right,
Yeah.
you have this heavy expectation of just, well, absolute culinary
No,
refinement.
totally. It's supposed to run like a perfectly choreographed ballet.
Right. You imagine the crystal glasses catching the light, the multi-course tasting menus, footmen in uniform standing at attention. It's very serious.
Yeah, it's theater, essentially. I mean, world leaders are expected to eat in a way that projects power and sophistication.
Exactly, like elevated above the everyday experience of the general public.
Right. You're expecting caviar, truffles, maybe a perfectly carved pheasant or something.
Which is exactly why the events of June 11th, 1939 are so jarring.
Uh-huh.
Because when you look at the historical accounts in the stack of sources you provided for us today, that whole fancy playbook is just, it's thrown completely out the window.
Completely abandoned.
Yeah. So Franklin Delano Roosevelt is hosting King George VI of England at his estate in Hyde Park, New York. And the clouds of World War II are gathering, right? It's this massive diplomatic moment.
Huge stakes.
And the President of the United States decides to serve the British monarch hot dogs.
Served on actual silver platters, no less. I mean, it is the absolute definition of a culinary culture clash.
It's so wild to picture.
Right. You have the ultimate symbol of working class street food being presented to literal royalty.
And, okay, the most incredible part of this story to me is that the king had never actually seen one before. Like, he apparently had to ask how to eat it.
Yeah, he was completely baffled by
I think he loved it so much he actually asked for seconds. And, of course, the press went wild over this.
Oh, they ate it up. Unintended.
Yeah. The Washington, D.C. Times-Herald printed this headline, claiming that the moment proved the hot dog, quote, truly makes the whole world kin. I mean, it was a diplomatic triumph wrapped in a bun.
It really was. And, it perfectly encapsulates the sociological phenomena we're looking at today. Because the success story of the hot dog, it isn't just about a recipe.
Right.
It's about immigration, urbanization, marketing, and how a nation builds its identity out of scraps.
Yeah.
Sometimes quite literally.
And that right there is the mission for this deep dive. We're taking the research you shared with us to unpack exactly how this humble food pulled off such a massive cultural coup.
It's quite the journey.
It really is. So for you listening, we're going to explore how it transformed from a disputed European immigrant sausage into a modern street food marvel.
Tracing its journey from, the gritty push carts of 19th century New York straight into the bleachers.
Exactly, to become the undisputed king of American baseball stadiums. But I guess to understand that trajectory, we really have to look at the mechanics of its arrival, right?
Yeah, because long before it was being served to royalty, it had to survive the transatlantic journey.
And going through your notes on the European origins, it seems incredibly messy. Like, I always just assumed frankfurter meant it came from Frankfurt.
A lot of people assume that, but the territorial claims are fierce. I mean, sausage itself is one of the oldest forms of processed food in human history.
Right, it's mentioned in Homer's Odyssey, isn't it?
Yeah, back in the 9th century BC. But when we look at the specific ancestor of the modern hot dog, the timeline just fractures.
So Frankfurt claims they invented it. Right?
Yeah, Frankfurt, Germany, claims he invented the frankfurter in 1487. They even threw a massive 500th birthday party for the sausage back in 1987.
Okay, but they aren't the only ones staking a claim. There's another German town mentioned in the research that completely disputes that.
Right, Coburg. The civic leaders there argue that a local butcher named Johann Gorganer, hopefully I'm saying that right, he actually invented the little dog or dachshund sausage in the late 1600s.
They just took it to Frankfurt.
Exactly. He just traveled to Frankfurt to market it. And then, of course, you have Vienna, Austria.
Oh, right, because their German name is Wien, which is where we get the term Wiener.
Exactly. They argue their version is the true predecessor.
Okay, I have to stop you there and push back on something that has been bugging me about all this.
Sure, go for it.
If sausage is one of the most ancient, universal ways to preserve meat, I mean, countries all over the world have their own versions. The Italians have theirs. The British have bangers.
Oh, absolutely.
So why did this specific, heavily disputed German variation become the foundational template for the American hot dog?
That really comes down to a collision of sheer demographic numbers in the Industrial Revolution.
Okay, how so?
Well, between 1830 and 1890, the United States saw a massive wave of German immigration. We are talking about 5 million German immigrants, arriving right as American cities were exploding in population.
Oh, wow. 5 million? That's a huge influx.
Huge. So this wasn't one rogue butcher with a secret recipe.
Right.
It was an entire cultural staple brought over by thousands of skilled tradesmen simultaneously.
And they were landing in a landscape that desperately needed what they were selling. Like when you read the descriptions of New York City in the 1860s, it just sounds chaotic.
Extremely fast-paced.
Right. The city was moving faster than ever, and these vendors started hitting the Bowery with these mobile push carts.
And those push carts are a crucial piece of culinary engineering. They weren't just tables. They had built-in coal-fed fireboxes.
So they were cooking them right on the spot.
Exactly. Simmering or steaming these sausages right there on the street, adapting to the lack of infrastructure. And the composition of the meat mattered here, too.
Because it wasn't just whatever scraps they had lying around.
No. They were using finely ground pork, sometimes mixed with beef, and stuffing it into natural casings, usually sheep or hog intestines.
Which gives it that famous snap.
Oh, the snap is everything.
Yeah.
When you bit into it, that natural casing provided a tactile resistance that made it incredibly satisfying to eat on the go.
Looking at it through that lens, you're essentially walking through this teeming, loud, gritty 19th century cityscape. And here is this incredibly cheap, highly portable, protein-packed meal.
That you can eat with one hand.
Exactly. While navigating a crowded sidewalk, it's basically the 1800s equivalent of the modern food truck revolution.
That's a great way to look at it. It was a fast casual street food, engineered perfectly for a society that suddenly didn't have time to sit down for a meal.
But to break out of just being a quick city lunch, it needed something else, right?
Yeah, its real breakthrough into mainstream American leisure culture required a shift in labor laws.
Oh, right. The weekend.
Exactly. By the 1870s and 80s, factories, mills, and banks started offering their workers something revolutionary, a half holiday on Saturdays.
Which is such a massive paradigm shift. I mean, before that, you worked 6 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Right, the working class didn't have leisure time before this.
But suddenly they do. And this new free time created a massive weekend exodus to places like Coney Island in New York.
You suddenly had thousands of factory workers enjoying sandy beaches, carousels, and vaudeville shows. But, those visitors needed to eat.
And they definitely didn't have the money for fancy sit-down seaside restaurants.
No, not at all. Which sets the stage perfectly for a guy like Charles Feltman.
Yes. The sources highlight him as a German baker who opened a stand at Coney Island in 1871.
Feltman saw the logistical bottleneck. Thousands of hungry people who want to keep walking the boardwalk, not sit at a table.
So he started selling these Dachshund sausages from a specialized cart.
Yep, and in his first year, he sold over 3,600 of them. He basically proved the economic model of high-volume, low-margin street food.
Okay, so you have this booming street food, but that creates a physical problem. If you're walking a sunny boardwalk, you can't exactly juggle a scalding piece of meat without burning your hands.
No, you definitely cannot.
Which leads us to the bun. And looking through the research you sent us, the mythology around how the hot dog got its bun is absolutely wild.
Oh, the myths are a historian's nightmare. They really are. The most famous one originates from the 1904 St. Louis Exposition, also known as the World's Fair.
The white glove story.
Yes, the infamous white gloves.
According to the legend, there's this Bavarian vendor named Anton Feuchtwanger who was selling piping hot sausages. And to keep his customers from burning their fingers, he supposedly loaned them these pristine white gloves.
Which is just a terrible business model.
Right, because people kept walking off the gloves as souvenirs and he was bleeding money. So in a panic, he asks his baker brother-in-law for a solution, and the guy improvises long, soft rolls to hold the meat.
And just like that, the hot dog bun is born.
It's an incredibly cinematic story. You have problem-solving, family collaboration, a bit of comedy.
And historians are almost certain it is entirely made up.
I have to admit, I was a little disappointed when I read that in the historian Bruce Craig's analysis.
It's a bummer, I know. But it just doesn't align with the historical record. Craig points out that Germans have been eating these specific sausages with bread for centuries in Europe.
So it wasn't a sudden, desperate invention at a 1904 World's Fair.
No, it was a deeply ingrained cultural practice. In fact, if we look back at Charles Feltman at Coney Island in 1871, he was already serving his sausages in a milk roll decades before that St. Louis Fair even happened.
Okay, so the dramatic bun myth is completely busted. It was just practical culinary evolution. But what about the name?
Ah, the name.
Yeah, because going from Dachshund sausage to hot dog is a massive branding shift. And there is another very famous, very romanticized origin story for that, too.
You're referring to the Tad Dorgan cartoon legend.
I am. This one claims that in 1901, at the New York Polo Grounds, a concessionaire named Harry Stevens was hawking food on a freezing April day.
Right, and he supposedly started yelling, "Get your dachshund sausages while they're red hot."
Exactly. And the story goes that a prominent New York Journal sports cartoonist named Tad Dorgan saw this, quickly sketched a literal dachshund dog nestled warmly in a bun, and because he supposedly couldn't spell dachshund, just captioned it hot dog.
Again, it sounds perfectly tailored for a Hollywood biopic. The lone genius has a stroke of inspiration and changes history.
But I'm guessing that's fake, too.
I'm afraid so. The only problem is that historians and archivists have spent decades scouring the archives. Dorgan was a very famous, prolific cartoonist. His work was heavily preserved.
And they never found it?
Nobody has ever found this supposed cartoon. The general consensus is that it simply never existed.
Wow. Okay, so if the cartoon is a phantom, where did the name actually come from? Because calling a food item dog feels like, well, terrible marketing.
It is terrible marketing.
Yeah.
The real origin is actually deeply cynical and highlights the prejudice immigrants faced back then. The term hot dog started appearing in college magazines, specifically at Yale, back in the 1890s.
Wait, really? Ivy League college students coined it?
Yes. In the fall of 1894, Yale students were buying these cheap sausages from immigrant-run wagons parked outside their dorms.
Okay.
And they sarcastically dubbed them dog wagons. One particularly popular stand was even nicknamed the Kennel Club.
Oh, I see where this is going. They were implying the meat was, questionable.
Yeah, it was a dark, xenophobic joke about the suspicious provenance of cheap street meat.
That is so grim.
It is. You have to remember, these German butchers actually did own small, long, thin dachshund dogs, and they themselves referred to their product affectionately as little dog sausages.
And the college kids just twisted that affection into a sarcastic slang term.
Exactly. Interestingly, hot dog was also used in the 1890s as slang for a swaggering, flashy young dandy. You know, the kind of guy who hung around public amusements eating these very sausages.
Okay, I want to pause on this for a second because it raises a really fascinating question about how we as a culture process our own history.
How so?
Well, if the real origin of the name stems from wealthy college kids making sarcastic, slightly xenophobic jokes about immigrant food, why do we cling so tightly to these fake myths?
That is the big question.
Why do we prefer missing cartoons and imaginary white gloves over the truth?
I think it has everything to do with the sociology of assimilation. The reality of cultural integration is usually slow, messy, and involves a lot of friction, like those sarcastic jokes at Yale.
Right.
But as a culture, we prefer the eureka moment. We like the idea of a lone genius solving a problem overnight. It scrubs the messy prejudice out of the story and packages history into a neat, marketable narrative.
A narrative that feels inherently American, it sanitizes the past.
Exactly.
But regardless of how it got the name, it's stuck. So we have this highly portable food wrapped in a bun with a catchy new brand name. But at this point, it is still largely an East Coast urban phenomenon.
Very localized, yeah.
So how does this street cart staple break out of New York and become a national obsession?
For that leap, the sources point to the year 1893 as the ultimate watershed moment. Two completely separate events happened that year that turbocharged the hot dog's trajectory.
Okay, what was the first one?
First, you had the Columbian Exposition in Chicago.
The Chicago World's Fair,
Oh,
which was a massive deal for infrastructure, right?
Enormous. You had the rise of transcontinental train travel, allowing millions of visitors from rural middle America to descend on a major urban center.
And they see all these hot dog carts.
Right. They encountered these convenient, inexpensive sausages, consumed them in massive quantities, and took that cultural memory back to their home states. It gave the hot dog unprecedented nationwide exposure.
But exposure is just the first step. The second event in 1893 is what actually cemented it into the American identity.
The baseball connection.
Yes.
Also in 1893, a German immigrant and bar owner named Chris von de Eye, who happened to own the St. Louis Browns Major League Baseball team, decided to introduce the hot dog as standard fare at his ballpark.
Looking at this from a marketing perspective, this might be one of the most brilliant pairings in business history. I view this the exact same way I look at the pairing of popcorn in movies.
I like that. Expand on that comparison. What makes it so effective?
Well, it wasn't a natural law of the universe that you had to eat a hot dog at a baseball game, just like you didn't inherently have to eat popcorn in a dark cinema. But Vandia recognized the specific mechanics of the leisure activity. Baseball is a slow-paced outdoor experience. You're sitting in the bleachers for hours, you want to cheer, you need to jump up for a foul ball.
You're constantly moving around.
Exactly. You can't eat a steak or a bowl of soup in the stands. You need a meal that requires only one hand, doesn't need utensils, and won't spill on the guy next to you.
He engineered a pairing that permanently rewired how Americans experience sports.
And the mechanical fit was just so perfect that it spread like wildfire.
It really did. By the turn of the century, these vendors were ubiquitous at racetracks, boxing matches, and baseball fields across the country. And sociologically, this is when the hot dog shed its immigrant status.
It stopped being viewed as a foreign oddity and simply became American.
There's a quote in the research from Humphrey Bogart that I think perfectly captures how this food transcended class boundaries. He said, "A hot dog at the game beats roast beef at the Ritz."
Oh, I love that quote. It really reveals the psychological shift.
It does. Bogart is asserting that the unpretentious joy of eating this simple food in a communal, egalitarian setting like a baseball stadium is actually superior to high-class luxury.
The hot dog became the great equalizer. The banker and the factory worker were eating the exact same thing in the bleachers.
Which perfectly explains how it managed to survive the turbulent eras that followed. As we move into the 20th century, America faced the Great Depression.
Right, and you would think a discretionary leisure food would collapse during that time.
You would. But the hot dog actually took on a new symbolic weight. During the 1930s, it became a powerful symbol of working-class resilience.
Because it was cheap.
Cheap, but also a satisfying hot meal that remained economically accessible even when the financial system was collapsing. The sources highlight a 1931 poem by a syndicated columnist named Walt Mason.
He wrote an ode to the humble hot dog stand, right?
Yes, and the phrasing is very deliberate. He contrasted the humble hot dog stand with the bitter resentment people felt for the men in lofty places who had caused the financial ruin.
The hot dog was positioned as the honest food of the people, standing in opposition to Wall Street greed.
Exactly. And then, barely a decade later, the country enters World War II.
Now, given the intense anti-German sentiment at the time, I would have assumed the hot dog would face a massive cultural backlash. I mean, during World War I, the government literally forced people to rename sauerkraut to Liberty cabbage.
Right, they really did. But the lack of backlash against the hot dog in World War II is the ultimate proof of its assimilation.
It was just too popular to ban.
By 1941, the hot dog was so deeply embedded in American life that it was virtually immune to anti-German sentiment. A reporter for the Detroit Free Press observed this phenomenon, writing that despite its undeniable Teutonic ancestry, the hot dog had become completely naturalized without a single Nazi sympathy.
That is fascinating. Which brings us full circle back to that 1939 state dinner with FDR and King George VI.
Ah, yes.
By serving hot dogs to the British monarch on the eve of a global war, FDR wasn't just being quirky. He was deliberately projecting a folksy, democratic, unified American identity to the rest of the world.
It was a highly calculated diplomatic gesture. And post-war, the hot dog's adaptability kept it relevant, even as the American economy boomed and meat rationing ended.
And the hamburger started dominating the new fast food diners.
Exactly. The hot dog didn't disappear. It moved into the new suburban backyard barbecues. It became a staple at drive-in movie theaters. And of course, it never lost its grip on the ballpark.
Looking at how it evolved in the modern era, I have a theory based on the research.
Let's hear it.
I think the hot dog's incredible survival essentially comes down to the fact that it is the ultimate culinary blank canvas.
A blank canvas. I like that. Let's unpack the mechanics of that.
If you look at how it operates as a modern street food, it perfectly reflects whoever is eating it. Like, the sources detail how the classic ballpark dog was brought down to Hermosillo, Mexico in the 1970s.
Okay.
And when it crossed back over the border a decade later, it had transformed into the Sonoran dog, wrapped in bacon, grilled, and buried under pinto beans, onions, tomatoes, and jalapenos.
It adapted to the regional palate while maintaining its core portable identity.
Exactly. And then you look at a place like Pink's Hot Dogs in Hollywood in the 1990s. They took this working-class depression meal and turned it into a celebrity status symbol.
Oh, right. The celebrity combos.
Yeah, you could order the Rosie O'Donnell, which was piled with chili, mustard, onion, and sauerkraut. Or the Drew Barrymore, which was a jalapeno dog with chili, mustard, onions, cheddar cheese, and 3 slices of bacon.
Wow. And add to that the health-conscious movement of the late 20th century. The blank canvas accommodated dietary shifts as well, with the introduction of tofu pups and soy boy not dogs.
It can be a 1930s depression meal, a Mexican street food masterpiece, a Hollywood celebrity flex, or a vegan snack.
It really is infinitely adaptable.
It is. But if we are talking about the modern era, my absolute favorite evolution of the hot dog has to be its role as a retail loss leader, specifically the Costco combo.
Oh, the legendary inflation-proof $1.50 hot dog and soda. It really defies modern economic logic.
It is an absolute force of nature. Costco essentially built an entire business model around dirt cheap nostalgia.
They really did.
They've kept that quarter-pound, all-beef hot dog combo at $1.50 for decades, regardless of inflation. And reading the Smithsonian article in the notes, it was not an easy fight internally.
Well, the economics of a loss leader mean the company actively loses money on the food itself, right? They're betting that the cheap meal draws you in and you end up buying a $1,000 television on the way out.
Which is a solid bet.
But as meat prices rose, that strategy caused internal panic.
Total panic.
Yeah.
In a 2018 interview, Costco's then CEO, Craig Jelinek, admitted he went to Costco's co-founder, Jim Sinegal, and said, "Jim, we can't sell this hot dog for $1.50. We are losing our rear ends."
And what does Senegal say?
Well, he looks at his CEO and purportedly says, "If you raise the effing dinosaur price..." Wait, actually, he was more direct. He just said, "If you raise the price, I will kill you. Figure it out."
I will kill you. Wow. That is a stunning level of dedication to a corporate psychological anchor.
It really is.
But Senegal understood that the hot dog represented absolute, unshakable value to their customers.
Figure it out. And they did. They completely bypassed the supply chain. They stopped buying from Hebrew National, built their own meat processing plants, started manufacturing their own Kirkland signature dogs.
Just to protect that $1.50 price tag.
Yes, just to protect the sanctity of the cheap American hot dog. It perfectly reflects the modern shopper looking for a reliable psychological anchor in a chaotic, inflationary economy.
It's a testament to how deeply entrenched this food is in the American psyche. We demand that it remains accessible, no matter the logistical cost.
We really have covered incredible ground today. Just looking back at the journey we've traced, I mean, it started as a highly disputed invention in European butcher shops, whether you believe Frankfurt, Coburg, or Vienna.
Right. And it survived the transatlantic journey to become the coal-fired fuel for German immigrants navigating the crowded streets of the Bowery.
We dismantled the romanticized myths of the white gloves and the missing cartoons, discovering instead the messy reality of assimilation.
And those sarcastic Yale students who actually gave it its famous name.
We saw how brilliant marketers like Chris Von de Ae recognized the mechanics of leisure time, bringing it into the bleachers of St. Louis and forever linking it with the pace of baseball.
And we watched it survive the Great Depression, integrate seamlessly during World War II, and adapt to the rise of the hamburger.
Ultimately proving itself as the ultimate culinary blank canvas of modern street food. Whether it's wrapped in bacon in Tucson, piled with chili in Hollywood, or fiercely protected at $1.50 at Costco, it is everywhere.
It's inescapable.
But going through all this research leaves me with one final thought.
Yeah.
Something for you, the listener, to mull over the next time you're standing in line at a stadium or firing up a summer barbecue.
Wait on us.
We just spent this entire deep dive proving that the hot dog was invented in Europe. It was brought over and popularized by German immigrants. It was sarcastically named by Ivy League college students mocking those immigrants.
Right.
And today it's frequently customized with Mexican jalapenos or engineered out of tofu. Yet despite all of those disparate global influences, it is universally considered the quintessential American food.
It's true.
So what does that actually say about what makes a recipe or a culture truly belong to a nation? Does a food become yours because you invented it in a vacuum? Or does it become yours because you were the one who finally figured out how to share with everyone else? Something to think about the next time you hear that snap.